Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third week of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Gosh, I am so glad we decided to do this like long term. Like I am so glad. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but if you're watching this, we're going for a total of 21 weeks. Well, maybe 19 at the end. We might like stick a couple of the smaller laws together, but I'm really good to be hanging out in Law 3 for a whole week instead of trying to like cram it into more than one. So Law 3 is the law of process. We are picking up, I don't know, Sherry, what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about last week? How do you want to proceed, ma'am?
Well, maybe we should just ask as we begin if anyone had sort of any amazing ahas during the past week after we had talked about the law of intention, the law number 2.
Law of influence.
The law of influence.
Yeah.
Law number 2. I know it. I had talked about the knowledge myth and how I was stuck there, and I realized I really am stuck there. Like it's really. And I've really reflected a little bit on it and thought about it. And that's not a bad thing to have knowledge, but it certainly is a limiting belief if I think that I need more knowledge before I act. And so I think that's maybe my biggest aha from the reflection on the past week.
Well, I remember Ame Darling, who is a master nutrition therapist, like has a ton of credible working hours with people, getting them through. Like she used to work with a surgeon to get people better after surgery, like all those things. And she knows all of the things. And she used to say, probably my biggest downfall is my title. And you would think that somebody with that kind of, certification behind their name in a business of health and wellness, it would be just, a shoo-in, like an absolute, right? But that just simply isn't the case. And I think I've heard the same thing from Wendy Larson. Like Wendy Larson doesn't really widely publicize what her certification is. I don't even know what it is. Just because she has found that it tends to be more of a hazard. Like she would rather be a good leader, spend more time developing your skills and in developing other people, because having a certification behind your name isn't duplicatable. Not everybody is going to take this particular business and go off to school for something.
I think it's a great reminder that there's 21 laws, there's not one. and it's a great reminder that it's not one person, it's a team. And that we all have skills to contribute. And so, yeah, that's really.
Yeah. I was going to say, I didn't try to influence 5 people this last week because that was our task at the end of the chapter, was to try to influence 5 people. But I did start to do a little bit more intentionality work with my daughters. And so we started doing our Bible time together. This week it was after swimming lessons, and we started reading a book together because I was like, influence really does start in the home. And I am still in that stage where I have not little people, but little-ish people who still consider me as a positive influence that they would actually accept, which is a bonus. And so I decided to start using my influence on those kiddos of mine. And it has just been such a blessing this week to see what's come of this, the conversations that have come out. So that has been huge for me over this last week, and just really deciding where I want my influence to be the loudest. And of course, that is in my home. And then in our church as well. So yeah, it's been neat for me to just sort of to pivot a little bit instead of just focusing all of my influence on my business and turning more intentional influence towards my family, my church, that kind of thing.
That's a great way to learn and to practice and to add that bigger picture.
Mhm. I'm hoping for the return later when they're
And
teenagers.
it will come. It will come.
I
I
am
promise.
banking on it.
I promise.
Good. You've got some experience there. I'm listening.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to share from the past week? And I think we learned last week that if you put your hand up, it's easy for us to recognize you and realize that you would like an opportunity to share. If you can't find your virtual hand, wave this one. It works just fine.
Or both. We're good with both. Help. An SOS. So go right ahead. Rosemary, you're waving.
Can you hear me or am I on mute?
Yep.
Can you hear me? I spent some time with my sister again last week and talking about influencing. Her sons are having a hard time with their father passing, and I had some conversations with them, and I think I did influence them a lot because they told my daughter that it really helped and they were going to try and pull up their socks and look out for their mom. That was a good feeling.
No kidding.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that shows incredible leadership, because when you hit times of stress, that's when you really see people's true colors come through. So Rosemary, for you to be able to have that clarity of mind and be able to speak into that positively and be a leader in that, that's huge. That is so huge, especially when there's a death, because people are often looking for someone to guide and direct. So good for you for doing that.
I know. I appreciate all the prayers and thoughts I got from the group. That was
Absolutely.
really felt it in my heart. Yeah, very nice.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
I think that's a great example, and I think that's a great lead in then into law number 3, which is the law of process, which is the one we're studying this week. And this for me, you know what? All these laws have I have big gaps in all these laws.
I'm feeling
the law of process is leadership develops daily, not in a day. And if we find the word leadership is a bigger word than we want to think about, we can just simply use the word influence. Influence develops daily.
I'm actually going to stop you, because you said something that really triggered something in my brain already. So guys, it's 11 minutes after we've gotten to the title and I'm stopping her. You said, I'm finding places where I have big gaps in everything. And I want to encourage you guys. Now, I know Sherry is responsible with her thinking, and that she's very intentional with her thoughts. But I fell into a trap last year of so desperately wanting to grow to that next level that anytime I would see a minute flaw or an area of growth that might have been like this big, I zoomed in on it and I amplified it so large that I almost completely negated my own personal growth already in that area, or my ability in that area. And I only zeroed in on those tiny little spaces that I needed to grow in. And so instead of them just being a tweak, they ended up being a massive mountain. And I made the growth so much harder. And so I, like Sherry, am seeing things in here that I'm like, oh, hey, there's something there. There's something there. And in my mind, I'm going, oh, that's just a small thing. That's a small thing that I can just get this much better at. And I know that if through this process, I'm simply better today than I was yesterday, that's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of all of this. So yes, Sherry might say, I'm seeing big areas, but that's not necessarily what she means. She means she's seeing opportunity for growth, because I know y'all look at Sherry and think she's got it going on. She's learning, she's growing, she's so much further ahead than I am. If she's seeing big areas, my areas must be humongous. Okay. Little tweaks. We are not tearing down the house. We are just like tightening some screws here and there. So that's, my brain went there too, Sherry. Like it totally did, but I had to talk myself down from it.
That's why there's two of us doing this, because that's a really, really good reminder. And it takes us to that secret to success is in our daily agenda. And it's little tweaks done over time. One small thing.
And spankings, because some things, some tweaks that maybe you did a year ago or implemented 6 months ago, you look at, or I'm looking at going, oh yeah, hey, my agenda, literal agenda, is looking a little bit more blank. I am trying to rely on my brain and sticky notes and not the plan. Guess what I need to get back to? That was what screamed at me through this. I was like, oh, process. Yep. Systems. I remember Lori Welch saying once, you're not getting the success that you want. Show me your day planner and I'll tell you why you're not successful. And that has like stuck in my brain. And I try to get better at it, but organization is one of those growth points for me always, right? So I have to keep going down. So actually, I love this law, which like, I loved it. It was such a great reminder. I don't know, anybody else? Like, and I loved that I had the book. This one chapter, like for sure, had extra little pieces in it I found than the workbook that I was like, ooh. I think I listened to it through on Audible twice and I read it. And highlighted the bejesus out of it.
I don't know if highlighting counts when every line is highlighted.
Well, it was okay. It wasn't every line, but does it count if I highlighted both in the book and in my workbook? Because the workbook got lots too. But yeah, it's good.
For sure.
I loved the Roosevelt stories. I loved that because we look at him as being one of those ultimate leaders again. And you look at the process that this man had to go through in order to become the leader that we see and that we remember now. I mean, we kind of deconstructed Abraham Lincoln. Was that last week or was that, I think it was last week.
Last week.
And I mean, you think of Lincoln and you're like, well, yeah, he was a great leader. He abolished slavery. He did all of these amazing things. And here we are like deconstructing his leadership. But that was more so at the beginning of his career. And now we're looking at another American president who is probably one of the most well-known presidents in history for doing all the things he did. And I actually didn't realize all of the things that he did do. But I don't know, maybe I'm jumping far ahead, but that just, I'm kind of a history nut. So when he pulls that in, I thought that was so cool. All the things that he had to do. The whole 673 speeches and 20,000 miles while campaigning. And then after he got shot with a broken rib and a bullet in his chest, he delivered a 1-hour speech before being allowed to go to the hospital or being like allowing them to take him to the hospital. I'm like, that's some tenacity there.
I think the other part of his tenacity was his willingness to grow, his willingness to do everything he needed to do every day to grow into the leader that he was choosing to become.
Well, and it was all mind over matter, right? Like the growth was, and that was the whole piece of that whole, he did that many speeches and that long because he already knew mind over matter. Was he tired? I'm sure he was, but it was part of the process that he'd already been doing his entire life was fighting against the physical, fighting against that exhaustion, and trying to do things that would just make him better and better and better. So yeah, just thought that was so neat. And the other great thing that they pointed out, Roosevelt didn't become a great leader overnight. His road to the presidency was one of slow, continual growth. So it just, over time, I mean, can you imagine? I don't know if his parents were still alive by the time he became president, but this boy that was so sickly and so unlikely to become a lot, even survive through childhood or teenage years into adulthood, becomes one of the most well-known and well-respected leaders and presidents in history. So I hope that that gives us hope. Like, I mean, we always say, if I can do this, anyone can do it. And other people look at who you are today and laugh at you because they see the end product, right? We need to remind people of maybe how sickly we were in our leadership abilities or our personal abilities. But yeah, I think that that's just so neat.
So it asks in the chapter about our plan for personal growth and what we're doing currently for personal growth. And I mean, everyone on this screen is obviously currently doing something for personal growth because they're studying and they're here and they're listening and they're doing things every day. But I do wonder how many of us have a plan for personal growth and what that looks like in our daily agenda. So I'm curious to hear, what people think about it, what their thoughts are, what it looks like for them.
I will just say that it has really shone a light, but reminded me of how nothing happens by accident. And if you're purposeful, things will unfold. Now, you might change your plan, but without a plan, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I realized I really do need to be more intentional on my, number one, that plan, but the daily plan too. So that's me calling myself out because I don't have a plan. I should have a plan. I knew before I read this that I needed to have a plan. Do not have a plan. So now I'm going to start planning to have a plan. Does that make sense? I plan to have a plan. I plan to be very well planned. I also like planners. So no.
That's a great start. Yes, Sharon.
There we go. Just had to unmute myself. I think it depends what area of life too, and kind of what stage we're in. Because the thing is I can look at something and say, okay, I had a plan there. Like, I don't know, for being a mom, I had a really good plan for being a mom, right? I've been very, very intentional right from the beginning, from like way back when I was 10 years old. That's like, this is what I'm gearing up for, right? So guess what? Now I'm a really good mom, right? I'm a great mom. I'm going to be honest here, right? But to have a plan, in terms of plexus and that kind of personal growth, no, I was actually just chatting about, with Ben about it just right before, which is why I was late. Like I had no plan. Like even in high school, no, man, my plan was to go be a mom. My plan was to go be a really good homemaker. Maybe I was laughing at Jamie last night. Maybe I'll be the Sunday school superintendent one day. That was my plan, right? And then life has kind of taken me in a different direction, and I need to get real intentional in other areas, right? Intentional, yeah. So I think it's interesting because I think it's I don't know, like if anyone else watched the thing, I don't even remember with the speaker who she was, but in Plexus, she kind of said, you can divide your life into these 4 basic areas, and you're going to naturally focus on 1, maybe 2 of the areas, and you kind of forget about the rest. And how that's not good. That's not balanced if that's your long-term plan. And now it's time for me to start focusing on something else, because in some of the areas that were important to me, it's reflex, right? I've done that log process. There's more to learn, but it's kind of reflex to do what I need to do, right? But this is an area that I have to get really intentional with, right? With more of a business mind thing. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense to me, Sharon, because we do one step at a time, and the plan that you had put in place many years ago, you've developed, you've grown, and it has become a habit of success. And it is very successful. And as you become accomplished at that level of habit, it's almost reflex, almost automatic, like you said. And so you now can see, and perhaps the bigger picture is a bigger plan for you a bigger growth opportunity to develop a plan for.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm at a weird place, I think, with that too, because while I was very aware of that, say the last 2 years, physically, I had so much going on that I didn't even know was going on. Right, I was unable to pour into that the way that I wanted to and needed to. Right, so then now that's literally been removed from my head. Well, that's funny. I had a brain tumor, if anyone doesn't know.
Thanks for the
But,
context.
Yeah, just for context, yeah. There was no exorcism. No, but
Splinter in your eye.
anyways, now that's out of the way, and now I'm at a place where we're kind of coming up to September. I have a bunch of stuff started where, okay, I know I'm going to homeschool again. That was something I didn't know even 2 months ago. That was not in the plan, but I kind of know that this is what I need to do with different things, and just figuring out, okay, what is that going to look like now? And what is my plan for that now? And maybe I can be one of those people that wake up at 5:30 and go and work for an hour or two and then kind of leave it and then come back. And yeah, it's weird being able to look at that and saying, no, I actually can physically, I can do this. Right. So, yeah.
And that goes straight into what he talks about being self-discipline and perseverance. Successful leaders are learners, and the learning process is ongoing, a result of self-discipline and perseverance. And I was already hearing from your story that even from the time you were 10, you became disciplined in the study that you wanted, right? So you started gleaning nuggets, you started learning things. Sharon, if you guys don't know, is probably one of the most proficient cooks outside of a professional kitchen that you will ever meet, along with all other homemaking type things, because that was her focus and that was her discipline, right? So I have no doubt that you would do that. And I'm pretty sure that you're going to be like the best homeschooler ever, again, because again, that goes into the motherhood and the self-discipline and all of those things. Remind me to tell you about a curriculum I just found. Anyway.
So I just wanted to add on to that of when you have that self-discipline, when you already have processes in other areas of your life, and the comment of, you can't focus necessarily on all four, but you can focus on one. And when you develop those processes in one area of life, it's all about building capacity to expand it to another area of your life. So you have a really solid foundation to work with. But the building capacity work, is a big thing. It's what we're all here to do with personal growth. But for anyone who doesn't know, John Maxwell also has a book, No Limits, about different capacities and building different capacities, because we all have different limits to the capacities that we face, whether it's an energy limit, physical, or whether it's just relational. There's a whole bunch of different things, and where are the things that we need to then grow to allow us to do the things that we really want to do.
The book was called No Limits. Is that new?
It's No Limits. It's actually, no, it's not new.
But it's it's one of the more recent books.
It's 2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cody's hands up.
Cody?
Sorry, I had to do some manual labor. I was just listening, and a couple of things being said is what did you say? No plan.
No plan stays complete in combat.
Oh, no plan stays complete in combat. So everybody makes a plan. Everybody has good intentions of planning, but we also have to be really good at
Overcoming, adapting, and improvising.
Overcoming, adapting, and improvising. Thank you. And the fellow who isn't in book club but stays in the background, who's always, you got to be able to change the plan as time goes around, happens, and life happens, and whatever was your plan 5 minutes ago, in the world that changes never endingly, you can still keep the theme of your plan, if you want to, but you can easily change the plan. And as you learn and grow and expand in your knowledge, your plan might be tweaked to include that. And I think too that, one of the things of, you may grow in one area, but almost every skill is interchangeable. Like, somebody said to me a million years ago when I was a switchboard operator, they said, how do you know how to do switchboard operating? You're an inventory person. And I said, well, because every call is an inventory thing in my head. So I'm just managing my inventory. So I had no inventory per se, but I was just using those skills in a completely different aspect. So, lots of people have skills that they think don't pertain, but they pertain to everything. It's just a matter of changing how you think about them. Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
That's really good.
I
That
love
is absolutely, yes, really, really good.
That actually reminded me of something that my husband said when he was taking training at Depot here. He always says, the body will never go where the mind has never gone before. And so if you have not thought through your day or your process or your plan, you can't expect your body to automatically sit down at 3 o'clock and spend 30 minutes reading if you haven't planned that going forward. I mean, for him, of course, it means more so, if I get to an accident, I'm not going to run. I'm going to do this. This is my process, right? But that's not my process. My process is this world, right? But it's still the same, right? And we teach our kids the same thing too. Like, if you have never thought about how you're going to react to somebody doing this in your life, or, offering you drugs, or doing, whatever, you're not actually going to know how to react. Your body isn't going to go where your mind hasn't already gone. So that's one of those Nolan nuggets. So Cody, you keep on bringing the nuggets from the porch. Like, I love that. That's so fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. We won't even call it the peanut gallery. I don't know. We need to call it the knowledge gallery or something. We really appreciate that.
I think that's totally true, because why else do first aid trainers practice scenarios? Why else do in combat they practice, possible situations? It's because you make a plan and you try it out, and then you've got a mind track, a thought track, and you then make the adjustment, the pivot, the change, the shift as you need to based on the circumstance. And you practice doing those kinds of things, just like we practice all sorts of comments back and how we are going to think about them to then determine how we're going to feel about them, to then think through what action we are choosing to take.
Absolutely. And that actually takes me back to the winning day comment that I made the other day. The whole purpose of the winning day and bringing people through that process is less for you to become disciplined, but more so that the process. When you meet somebody who's like, hey, I need a 6-figure income in my life, can you show me how to do that? You're going to be like, yes, I can, because I have learned the process and I've been there and I've gone through all of these things, and I've done these things not just to further my business, but to be able to teach you how to build yours. Gives it another step. I love these phases. Are we phasing already?
We're into phases, because I went through these phases and I'm like, I think I'm still in phase 1. I don't know what I don't know.
You texted me and you're like, I don't know what I don't know. And I'm like, it's so true. And I think I've said that like 3 times to my kids this last week. Like, this person doesn't know what they don't know. Like, it's not their fault. Don't treat them like they're dumb because they don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know either.
I was smiling at Sharon saying, it's now a habit. She's like phase 5. I simply go because of what I know. It's like the mom thing. I just do it. I'm
She's
phase
a phase-
5.
She's a phase 5
I'm
mom.
like, I'm sorry, I'm back in phase 1 again. I don't know what I don't know.
Oh my goodness. But there's different places where we don't know. And
Right.
I think the funny one is when you think you're like a phase 3 or a phase 4 and you think you're plodding along and you're doing really good. And then all of a sudden there's like this blind spot that all of a sudden gets like highlighted and you're like, oh yeah, didn't know that. How did I not know that? I feel like there's a crater in my leadership ability because I didn't know this. And how was I so unaware that I didn't know this? Right. I really have seen this though. Others believe that leadership is only for a few. And I can't say it enough. If you have one person listening to you, you're a leader. Right? And leadership is an action. I truly believe leadership is an action, not necessarily the result of followers. They do say, he was talking about something about there's no one to follow you or something. I can't remember where that was. But I really do believe that if you want to become a leader, I'll go back to my whole, when I was in 3rd grade and I desperately wanted to create a club that was Kids for Saving Earth, because Safeway just had that hook where you could gather plastic bags and you could change the world. And I really wanted to do it. Like that was my, newspapers and recycling. And it was just a big thing. And I wanted to bring other people with me, but my level of influence was low at that point in time. And I couldn't lead. So I just started doing it. Nobody followed me for a really long time. And I mean, it was 3rd grade, so there was other things involved, but it just really reminds me of that whole, like, you can choose to be a leader. And if you don't have anyone following, you just start to lead. And at some point in time, you'll get to the point where you start attracting the right people who want to follow your style of leadership, who, connect with where you are. Don't discount yourself and your ability just because you don't look like somebody else.
I thought there was an interesting question in the, I think it was in the workbook on what does a culture of growth look like? And I really was thinking about that and thinking about what culture is, how we create culture. So what culture is in our families? What's our family culture? So starting there, what would a culture of growth look like in your family? Because maybe that's where we can most connect with. And for me, a culture of growth in my family is things like having books, talking about news, talking about ideas versus talking about people. So I'm interested to hear from those of you here, what does a culture of growth look like for you?
I'm excited to hear from you guys. This is something that I love talking about culture. Sharon.
Yes, Sharon.
Say something a lot. It's interesting. I think it's when I look in family stuff, I've been really fortunate. I've been really, really fortunate because I come from a family that is into growth. I have a 91-year-old Oma whom is constantly learning and constantly growing and constantly challenging herself and is still going, oh, I didn't know that. I guess I was wrong before. I thought this when I was 60, but I don't think this now, right? I have a dad who went back to university to go add a few more degrees to his thing when he was 65, right? Last year. And that matters. I mean, now I have like my parents, they're actually doing like a bunch of John Maxwell stuff again after having done it however many years before, and then kind of focused on like some other stuff. And then they're having like a great old time having coffee in the morning, going through one of the books together. Right. So I think I've been fortunate in seeing that side of it. You know, it's never too late, but there also hasn't been that pressure to get to it now, right? Which is maybe not good, right? So it's kind of flip-sided coin.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Who else would like to share a little bit about what culture of growth looks like for them?
Cody.
I think having the openness in your family to hear different opinions on things and not, you know, in various times in my life, some of my opinions have been poo-pooed or put down, or, you know, whether I just ignored it or kept on is something, but there have been people along my lifeline that have listened to me and said, oh, okay, that's a nice opinion. I don't agree with it, but that's your opinion. So go ahead and be gone. And how did you get to that? How did you work to that? Or how did that come about? Because having the ability to talk about your opinions or your thought processes helped me in many ways grow in learning how strong that opinion is in my life, how that belief system works in my life, how listening to other people's opinion about the same thing, whether it's the same or different, has made me think, oh, I didn't think about that aspect of it, or oh, that's a new thought process. So maybe I need to tweak that my opinion based on what else is growing in there. And I think that, you know, books have been a huge part of my life. I don't think there's a topic that I won't read on. Whether it sticks or whether it doesn't is irrelevant. It's just one more thing. I remember as a kid being in a book contest, the most you can read in grade 4 or whatever it was, and it was, you had to learn the lesson of the book. You had to explain the book to somebody, otherwise you didn't get your point for the book or whatever it was. But it was, every book, be it a book like a reference book or a fluff book or a comic book, they all have some sort of thing you can learn from. And that's taken me very far in the world, simply because I'm willing to look for thoughts and opinions and things that don't match mine so that I can learn more about it. So I think having that openness to learn in whatever aspect it is a never-ending process, and a way of learning about basket weaving isn't about basket weaving as much as learning, you can have a pretty piece at the end, but it's learning persistence. It's learning how to coordinate your hand-eye coordination. It's about learning what colors look good together, but it's not about, it's great that there's an end product, but it's not about basket weaving per se, or lawn mowing or any of those things. It's about the process at the end. So anyways, I'll shut up.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I think basket weaving is a brilliant, it's a brilliant, for instance, because if you give up, you don't get the basket. But persistence, I can only imagine. Amy has her hand up.
My internet's really poor, so I'm sorry I can't put my video on.
We miss your face.
think that culture of is sharing the ideas. So talking about the books you're reading, but sharing those ideas and listening to other people's sides. Like Cody said, just letting the conversation be a conversation, not you must think like me, or you need to know this, but just as a, I learned this. Have you learned this? What was your experience? And sharing it and evolving it. And having these book studies where we're diving in deep in something that's very relevant in every day. And we just had that beautiful conversation about capacities in different areas and how we can move that. But also so that we can have a book study about, oh, I forget the new Plexus one. Darn, it's going to be a good book too.
I was just going to ask.
And we can we can share those ideas in a space that we can feel heard and seen, but that we can also hear and see others.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Something I was going to say is that part of like growth is realizing, like Sherry said, she gave us an example that her family is, you know, they're very growth minded, right? Like it's a culture of growth in her family, and they do that by discussing thoughts and ideas and processes and books and all of those kinds of things. But not everyone has grown up, and Sharon too, right? Not everyone grew up in a place like that where you discuss thoughts and ideas. A lot of people have grown up in a culture where you don't discuss ideas, you discuss people, or you discuss ideas as like what Amy said, but the flip side of it, you know, you have to think like me, or it's ridiculous or stupid to not think like me, and whatever. So there's a huge growth element for people who choose to turn from that. And that in itself of changing habits and realizing that the first step to your growth culture is changing the pattern of the past. And so some of you guys may resonate with those areas. Maybe you grew up in that area. Some people might realize that they resonate with the fact that their first step to growth needs to be to say, no, I'm going to be counterculture to what I was raised as, or what I've allowed in my home, or with my friends. I'm going to choose something different. Now Amy has me looking for the new book.
I think one of our challenges isn't a lack of growth opportunities. It's a selection of growth opportunities that are right for us. Yes, Linda.
I love it in our household with the younger generation now working with us, and the ideas and the concepts that we can all talk and get and learn off of each other. And so yeah, that's something that I never had growing up, but yeah, it's great.
That's awesome.
And a great example for the future generations when they see and experience it as they go forward.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Amy said the book is Outrageous Achievement by Leslie Zahn. I think she put it into the comments.
Yes. I have never heard of this author before. Very interesting.
I'm amazed. They have so many that I've never heard of before. So it's very cool. So there are many, many opportunities for growth. And I think that comes back to that planning that we're going to do in terms of what's our daily agenda, what's our plan for growth. How do we incorporate all the numerous opportunities into the intentionality for where we want to go? Because not everything is a fit right now. It may be a fit. It may be a fit next month. Not everything is a fit today. And I think that's part of the creating a plan for our growth, is choosing what's a fit for now.
And I think too, having an idea of where you want to get to and the steps that you can take today, because I am totally guilty of being like, I'm overhauling my life. Like, I'm one of those January 1st people that'll be like, I'm changing everything. All the things are changing because I see all the things that need to change, and they all need to change at exactly the same time. I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of girl. And so then if I fail or do not succeed to implement every single change on the list of 37 that I've created in, the first 5 days, I get discouraged. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just try to do all 37 again tomorrow, instead of being like, okay, good job, girl. You did 3. High five. There were 3 things you did to change today, right? So a person can almost look at that. We talk about a 30, 60, 90-day goal. Part of those goal setting things can be, okay, I want to have read a book by the end of this month. I am going to schedule 30 minutes a day. Some days I'm going to get 15. Other days I might take 45. Some days I may not get to read at all. But if the end goal is by the end of the month, and you keep those goals or that process, the whole picture in front of your face often, you are more likely to succeed. And so maybe you say, yeah, okay, I want to be working X number of hours on my business. I want to be sending out this many messages. I want to be sponsoring this number of people. Make the changes now and plan to achieve that in a longer time frame than like 36 seconds. Brenna.
So that's really awesome, Janelle, and I'm completely overwhelmed. So I'm simply going to share what a completely ratcheted down, less ambitious plan could be. For those of you who are maybe on the less ambitious track. And one of the things, because Amy, Mom, and I actually went through this book last summer, and one of the things we tried to do was each week we tried to do one thing. We didn't always do one thing. I certainly didn't. Out of 21 laws, I maybe did 10. That's probably being generous to give myself a passing grade. But it's amazing what doing one thing a week intentionally, some of those are, you guys talked because they gave you a challenge last week of having those conversations of who are you going to influence. FYI, my plan for influence someone is actually going to be a 2 to 3 week process, multiple conversations, repetition. We'll get there. I'm confident. It just isn't going to happen in 7 days. But it's one of, when I look back, and last night, Mom and I were reflecting on the growth we've seen in the last 12 months, those little steps add up.
Yes.
And you may not be able to imagine where you're going to be 12 months from now. You may not have that 60, 90-day plan, but just take the step. Have the conversation, and guess what? That conversation went well this week. Maybe you have the conversation again next week, and you do something else. And it's just because I was convicted about the fact that I don't have a plan written down. My calendar is my plan, because everything goes in there. But it's the fact of what I really committed to when I went through this book last year was just do one thing. Do one thing before I freak myself out and get scared and don't do it.
Yeah, totally. And I wasn't meaning that people needed to do 37 things in a day. It was just simply the idea that if you view change that needs to happen, there may be 37 steps to that change that you perceive currently. But yes, I agree with you. Doing the one thing and then celebrating the one thing and celebrating those small successes, right? That we don't tend, like, it would be really easy, Brenna, I'm sure, right? You're like, okay, I did the one thing this week. Oh, but I didn't do those 3 other things that I kind of thought maybe I should do. Well, shoot. Well, that wasn't a very successful week, right? Sherry, remember, what book was it that you were like, if I have to write down every day the things that I did well or things that went well, you'll be surprised at all the things that you could find that really did go well, even if you feel like you had a bad day. Where were we with growth on that? Where did that come from? I don't remember. That was like 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, who knows? But I love that concept. Actually realizing what went right in your day, even if you feel like you got nothing accomplished, right? So yes, I love that.
I think this is really going to lead well into the next chapter, which is the law of navigation, which you create that plan. And I think we've kind of bled into that whole idea of where are you going? How are you getting there? And do you have a compass? Because sometimes we do have a great big vision of where we want to go, but we forgot that we need some instructions for how to get there. So the law of navigation is a great layering piece for that plan part. So one step a day and create the navigation. So I'm excited about the law of navigation. I find this law of process hard work, but I'm excited about the law of navigation.
Almost like he knew when he was writing the book that he should put navigation after process, right? Funny. You know, the one thing that I thought was really interesting from this chapter that I just want to say at the end here is he decided after 50 some years of life that maybe at that point he might be qualified enough to begin teaching on leadership or something to the like, right? And I thought, that's so interesting, because I'm sure that there were many people who thought very highly of him and his leadership and his teaching and all of those things long before that, right? Like long before that. And yet his concept was, I guess maybe now I have something to teach, right? And it's funny because we can discount what we have learned because we see how much further we have to go, right? And I think that goes back to that, one of the other phases. I know what I don't know, right? And you really zero in on that. I know what I don't know, and so I'd better learn it. And it really actually, what I know doesn't really matter. So guys, don't discount what you do know and the value that you can give to people around you, even if you're not where you think you need to get to yet, because it's all a process. Hence, yeah, law of process. And I'm excited that we're getting a compass this next week.
There we go. There we
A
go.
bonus. Does anyone else have any other closing thoughts? Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here with us this morning. Sherry, we missed your erythral glow coming in through the window. You guys should have seen at the beginning, she had like streams of light. It looked like her message was coming from the heavens above. It was fantastic. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for your thoughts. And I love going through this with you all. I love hearing from all of you. I really do feel like a group of people that grow together, they bond. And again, talking about culture, we want to foster a culture of growth in our teams. They have done that with Plexus in general, right? That's why we have book studies. That's why we have the new Ambassador Academy, all of these challenges. So yeah, absolutely. Oh, Jimmy says, all I know is that this is a chapter for me. I feel that way about all of them. I feel like he wrote it for me, but that's just selfish. So I'm sure he wrote it for you too, but I'm just kidding. Anyway, you guys have a great week and we will see you soon. Tuesday?
Tuesday night.
All right. Bye.